The invitation arrived on Tuesday, but I'd been excluded from the planning meeting held the previous Sunday. I'm Travis Bailey, 34, pharmaceutical sales representative for the River Plaza community in Westridge, Missouri. I've lived at 1247 Maple Ridge Drive for 3 years. The neighborhood runs on unwritten rules about participation and belonging. The glossy cardstock felt expensive between my fingers. Annual River Plaza Summer Kickoff Barbecue, Saturday, June 15th, 2 p.m., Riverside Park Pavilion. Below the elegant script, smaller text listed organizing committee members. Silas Nelson's name appeared first as event coordinator. I checked my calendar. Nothing scheduled. I checked my email. No planning invitations. No committee requests for volunteers or contributions. The previous year's barbecue happened in my backyard. Silas had approached me in March, explaining how my corner lot provided perfect space for the community gathering. I'd agreed immediately. Spent $400 on deck repairs and landscaping improvements. Bought a new gas grill specifically for the event. 43 neighbors attended. Everyone praised the setup. Silas thanked me publicly, promising next year would be even better. I walked to my mailbox and examined the invitation again. The return address showed Silas's house at 1289 Maple Ridge Drive, 4 houses down from mine. We'd exchanged tools, shared contractor recommendations, discussed property line maintenance schedules. My phone buzzed. Text message from Autumn Nelson, Silas's wife. Hope you can make it Saturday. Should be fun. I typed back, wouldn't miss it. Need help with setup. Her response came quickly. All handled, thanks. Something felt calculated about that exchange. Too polite, too distant. I drove past Riverside Park that evening. The pavilion sat empty, but fresh tire tracks marked the gravel parking area. Someone had been scouting the location recently. Thursday morning, I encountered Silas at the community mailbox cluster. He wore his usual friendly expression, but his eyes avoided direct contact. Looking forward to Saturday, I said. Should be great weather, he replied. Perfect for outdoor activities. Need any last-minute help? I've got experience hosting these things. We're all set. Committee handled everything. Committee. The word hung between us like a barrier. I'd never been asked to join any committee, never received meeting notifications, never been consulted about venue changes or planning decisions. That afternoon, I checked the River Plaza Homeowners Association website. The events calendar showed the barbecue listing, posted 3 weeks earlier. Posted while I was traveling for work conferences. Posted without any advance neighborhood discussion I could remember. I scrolled through previous event announcements. Block parties, holiday celebrations, community garage sales. Each listing included planning committee contact information. Each committee featured the same core group of residents. My name appeared nowhere in the organizational structure. Friday evening, I noticed unusual activity around Silas's house. Cars parked along the street. Lights on in his garage, the sound of boxes being moved and voices discussing logistics. I stepped onto my front porch, pretending to water plants. Through Silas's open garage door, I could see folding tables, coolers, and decorative banners. Everything needed for a large outdoor event. Autumn emerged from the garage carrying a clipboard. She spotted me and waved, but quickly disappeared back inside. The garage door closed moments later. I stood in my driveway, holding the garden hose, watching water pool around my feet. The invitation in my pocket suddenly felt heavier, more deliberate. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect barbecue weather, just as Silas had predicted. I drove to Riverside Park at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. The pavilion buzzed with activity, tables arranged in precise rows, grills already smoking. Decorations hung from support beams. Everything looked professionally organized. Nothing like the casual backyard gathering I'd hosted the previous year. Silas stood near the registration table, checking items off a detailed list. He looked up as I approached, his smile appearing forced. "Travis! Glad you could make it." "Impressive setup," I said. "Must have taken significant planning." "Committee worked hard on this." That word again. Committee. I scanned the crowd, recognizing most faces from the neighborhood, families I'd helped with snow removal, neighbors who'd borrowed my ladder for gutter cleaning, people who'd attended my backyard barbecue 12 months earlier. None of them had mentioned the planning meetings. None of them had suggested I join the organizing committee. None of them seemed surprised by my obvious exclusion from the preparation process. I grabbed a plate and moved through the food line, making polite conversation. Everyone acted normal, friendly, welcoming. But something fundamental had shifted in the neighborhood dynamic, and I was apparently the last person to understand what had changed. The barbecue continued for 3 hours. I stayed until the end, watching the cleanup process with growing unease. Autumn directed volunteers with military precision, tables folded and stacked according to a predetermined system, trash sorted into recycling categories, equipment loaded into designated vehicles. This wasn't spontaneous community organization. This was practiced routine. Same time next month? Someone called out. Second Saturday, Silas confirmed, weather permitting. Next month. They'd been planning monthly events. I drove home with more questions than answers. The invitation timeline bothered me most. Delivered Friday evening for a Saturday afternoon event. Less than 24 hours notice. Either poor planning or deliberate timing. Monday morning, I called the Westridge Parks Department. The conversation lasted 12 minutes and confirmed my suspicions. River Plaza Homeowners Association has reserved Pavilion B for the second Saturday of every month through December, the clerk explained. Reservation submitted in February. 8 months of advance planning. Who submitted the reservation? Silas Nelson, listed as HOA Social Committee Chairman. I thanked her and hung up. Silas had never mentioned being appointed to any HOA position. The annual meeting minutes from January made no reference to a social committee formation. Something was systematically wrong with the neighborhood communication structure. Tuesday evening, I attended the monthly HOA board meeting at the community center. 12 residents in folding chairs, facing a table where 3 board members reviewed standard business. Autumn Nelson sat in the secretary position, taking detailed notes. Her husband wasn't present. During new business, I raised my hand. I'd like information about the social committee and monthly park reservations. Autumn looked up from her notepad. What specific information? Formation date, membership selection process, budget allocation. The board president, a retired accountant named Gerald Hoffman, shuffled through papers. I don't see any formal committee establishment in our records. But the Parks Department lists Silas Nelson as Social Committee Chairman for our HOA. Silence stretched across the room. Other residents shifted in their seats. Autumn cleared her throat. Silas handles event coordination as a volunteer service. No formal committee structure required for social activities. Monthly park reservations suggest ongoing organizational commitment, I said. Shouldn't residents have input on recurring community events? All residents receive invitations, Autumn replied. Participation is voluntary. 24 hours notice doesn't allow adequate planning time. We'll consider adjusting notification schedules, Gerald said, clearly wanting to move forward. The meeting continued with standard HOA business, landscaping contracts, snow removal bids, mailbox maintenance, nothing about social events or community coordination. I left feeling more isolated than before. Wednesday afternoon, I walked through the neighborhood, paying attention to details I'd previously overlooked. Conversation stopping when I approached. Curtains moving in windows. Subtle changes in neighbor interactions. The Hendersons, who lived 3 houses down, were loading camping gear into their SUV. I'd helped them move a refrigerator 6 months earlier. Going somewhere fun? I asked. Just a weekend trip, Mrs. Henderson replied, avoiding eye contact. Camping season's almost over. Last chance before winter. Their teenage son emerged from the house carrying a cooler. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away. Have a great time, I said. They finished loading in. Silence. Thursday morning brought an unexpected discovery. While checking my mailbox, I noticed Autumn Nelson retrieving mail from the cluster box that served our street section. She wasn't collecting mail from her own box. She was using a master key to access multiple compartments. I watched from my driveway as she sorted through various pieces of mail, setting some aside and returning others to their respective boxes. When she noticed me watching, she waved casually and walked back toward her house, carrying a small stack of mail that clearly belonged to different addresses. That evening, I called the Postal Service customer service line. The conversation lasted 43 minutes and involved 3 different supervisors. Clusterbox master keys are only issued to postal employees and authorized property management companies, the final supervisor explained. Homeowners associations don't qualify for master key access. What if someone has unauthorized access? That would constitute mail tampering, a federal offense. You'd need to file a report with postal inspectors. I thanked her and considered my options. Accusing a neighbor of mail tampering required substantial evidence. Watching someone use a key didn't prove unauthorized access. But it explained the invitation timing perfectly. Friday afternoon, I positioned myself in my home office with a clear view of the mailbox cluster. At 2:30 p.m., the postal carrier completed delivery. At 3:15 p.m., Autumn Nelson approached with her key. I recorded the interaction on my phone, capturing her accessing multiple boxes and sorting mail. The video quality was clear enough to show specific actions, but not detailed enough for legal evidence. She repeated the process Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of the following week. Always the same routine, always the same careful sorting of mail. I needed better documentation. Tuesday morning, I visited the Westridge Police Department Community Relations Office. Officer Taylor Jackson handled neighborhood disputes and property conflicts. Mail tampering falls under federal jurisdiction, she explained, but we can document suspicious activity for postal inspector referral. What constitutes sufficient evidence? Clear video showing unauthorized access, witness statements, documented pattern of behavior. How do I prove the key access is unauthorized? Postal Service would need to confirm key distribution records. I left with incident report forms and contact information for the postal inspector's office. Wednesday evening, I installed a security camera system focused on the mailbox cluster. 2 cameras with overlapping coverage, motion activation, and cloud storage backup. The installation took 3 hours and cost $400, worth every dollar for documented evidence. Thursday afternoon, the cameras captured Autumn's mail sorting routine in high definition, timestamp, facial recognition, clear key usage, specific box access patterns. I had 5 days of recorded evidence before making my next move. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While reviewing footage, I noticed Autumn consistently removed specific pieces of mail from my box and others. Always the same type of envelope. Always the same return address format. Community event invitations. She was intercepting invitations before residents received them, then redistributing them according to her own timeline and criteria. Some residents received invitations immediately. Others received them with minimal notice. Some never received them at all. I was in the minimal notice category, receiving invitations only after events were fully planned and organized. The systematic exclusion wasn't accidental. It was deliberate social engineering, controlled through mail manipulation. Friday morning, I called the postal inspector's office and filed a formal complaint. Case number 2024 WR1847. The investigation would take 2 to 3 weeks. But I already knew the truth. Silas and Autumn Nelson had been orchestrating neighborhood social events specifically designed to minimize my participation while maintaining plausible deniability. The monthly BBQs, camping trips, holiday parties, and seasonal gatherings I'd been missing weren't oversights or communication failures. They were calculated exclusions, executed through federal mail tampering and fraudulent HOA representation. My trusted neighbors had been systematically isolating me from the community I'd called home for 3 years. Monday morning, I walked to Silas Nelson's front door with a manila folder containing 43 pages of documentation. Security footage screenshots, postal inspector case numbers, HOA correspondence analysis, and mail delivery timestamps. He answered wearing his usual weekend barbecue apron. "Travis, good to see you, neighbor. We need to talk about the mail situation." His expression shifted. The friendly mask slipped for exactly 2 seconds before returning. "Mail situation?" I opened the folder and showed him the first photograph. Autumn Nelson, clearly visible, removing mail from my designated slot at the cluster box. Timestamp: Thursday, 3:47 p.m. This is from last week. I have 5 days of similar footage. Silas studied the image without speaking. His hands remained steady, but his breathing pattern changed. "There's been some kind of misunderstanding," he said finally. "No misunderstanding. Your wife has been intercepting community event invitations for months, redistributing them according to her own timeline. Some residents get immediate delivery. Others get delayed delivery. Some get no delivery at all." I showed him the second photograph. Autumn sorting through multiple pieces of mail, clearly selecting specific envelopes. The postal inspector opened case 2024 WR 1847 on Friday. Federal mail tampering carries serious penalties. Silas stepped onto his porch and closed the door behind him. "Let's discuss this reasonably. I've been reasonable for 8 months. Missing events, assuming communication failures, trusting your explanations about last-minute planning." The third photograph showed Autumn accessing 3 different mailboxes during a single visit, clear violation of federal postal regulations. "How many other residents are in the delayed delivery category?" I asked. Silas didn't answer immediately. He was calculating, weighing options, considering damage control strategies. "The camping trip invitations," I continued, "sent out 6 weeks ago to preferred residents. Delivered to my box 3 days before departure. Insufficient notice for planning." "Travis, you're making this sound more complicated than." "The holiday party invitations. Sent out 4 weeks early to core group members. Delivered to my box the day before the event." I showed him the mail delivery analysis chart. 47 community events over 8 months, categorized by invitation timing and recipient groups. "You've been running a 2-tier social system. Inner circle gets full participation opportunities. Outer circle gets token invitations with impossible timing." Silas examined the chart without speaking. The data was comprehensive and undeniable. "The barbecue planning meetings," I said, "held every 3rd Tuesday at 7 p.m., never mentioned to outer circle residents. Never included in general communications. Those are informal discussions. Documented in HOA meeting minutes as official community planning sessions. Required to be announced to all residents per Article 7, Section 3 of our community guidelines." I handed him the HOA documentation analysis. 12 planning meetings, 0 proper notifications to affected residents. You've been violating community guidelines while serving as unofficial social coordinator. Silas set the folder on his porch railing. "What do you want?" Full disclosure to all residents about the mail tampering. Written apology from Autumn. Resignation from any unofficial community coordination roles. "And if we refuse?" "The postal inspector completes their investigation. Federal charges get filed. HOA board reviews your violations of community guidelines. Other affected residents learn about the systematic exclusion." I showed him the final document. A list of 17 residents who'd received delayed or missing invitations over the past 8 months. "I've identified the pattern. Other residents will recognize it once they see the data." Silas studied the list carefully. His neighbors, his friends, his community standing. "Some of those people have been asking questions," he admitted. "About missing invitations? About communication breakdowns. Feeling left out of planning discussions." The admission confirmed my analysis. The systematic exclusion had been noticed by multiple residents. Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Community Center Meeting Room. You'll present the full situation to affected residents and the HOA. Word. Travis. Or I presented myself with postal inspector documentation and federal case numbers. Silas picked up the folder and flipped through the pages again. 43 pages of evidence, timestamps, federal case numbers, and community guideline violations. Autumn doesn't know about the cameras, he said quietly. She'll find out Wednesday evening. This will destroy our reputation in the community. You destroyed your reputation when you started tampering with federal mail. I walked back to my house and called Officer Taylor Jackson from the Neighborhood Services Division. Community Relations needed documentation of the resolution process. Tuesday morning, I received a call from Autumn Nelson. Her voice was controlled but strained. Silas told me about your concerns. Federal mail tampering isn't a concern, it's a crime. I was trying to help coordinate events more efficiently. By intercepting mail and controlling information distribution? Silence on the line for 15 seconds. The community functions better with organized planning, she said finally. The community functions better with honest communication and equal access to information. Some residents aren't interested in every event. Some residents never got the opportunity to express interest because they never received invitations. I could hear paper shuffling in the background. She was reviewing the documentation Silas had shown her. What happens at the Wednesday meeting, she asked. You explain the mail tampering to affected residents. You apologize for the systematic exclusion. You resign from any community coordination roles. And the postal inspector investigation continues until they complete their review. Your cooperation might influence their recommendations. The call ended without further discussion. Wednesday evening, 17 residents gathered in the community center meeting room. The HOA board attended as observers. Officer Taylor Jackson documented the proceedings for neighborhood services records. Autumn Nelson stood at the front of the room with a prepared statement. Her hands shook slightly as she read. Over the past 8 months, I made poor decisions regarding community event coordination. I intercepted mail invitations and redistributed them according to my own timeline rather than allowing normal postal delivery. The room remained silent. Several residents took notes. This resulted in some community members receiving delayed invitations or missing events entirely. My actions violated federal postal regulations and community guidelines. She looked up from her statement. I apologize to affected residents and resign from any community coordination responsibilities. The question started immediately. How many events? Which residents? How long had this been happening? I provided the documentation analysis. 47 events, 17 affected residents, 8 months of systematic exclusion. The HOA board scheduled a formal review for the following week. Officer Jackson collected statements from affected residents for the neighborhood services file. By 9 p.m., the meeting concluded with a clear resolution plan, new community coordination procedures, transparent invitation processes, and oversight protocols. The postal inspector closed case 2024 WR 1847 2 weeks later, with a formal warning and community service requirement for Autumn Nelson. The systematic exclusion was over, but the community dynamics had permanently changed.